All right, I want to go to Michael Law. He's a political analyst and author of Founders Revolution. And it's on the topic of this war that the president has with the media. Last week, Jim Acosta from CNN had quite the booing event that occurred at a Trump rally. Additionally, he went into the White House briefing room and asked for Sarah Huckabee Sanders to basically denounce what the president has said. Ivanka Trump earlier in the day came out and did not agree with her father that the media is the enemy of the people. But Huckabee Sanders refused to go down the road Acosta wanted her to go, so he got up and left. Michael Law, what was your take on what was your take on that, Mike?
Well, number one, with Sarah Sanders, she did her job exactly as she should, which is not provide an opinion, her own opinion. Her job is to provide the opinion of the president and anything else that he wishes to speak.
I completely agree with that. It's her role is to speak on behalf of the president. Her opinion should be irrelevant.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And in the case of what President Trump said concerning and he specified the fake news media, not all media, but just the fake news, as being an enemy of the state or enemy of the people. They truly are when they're not doing their job, which is as a government watchdog. They're supposed to be looking out for the people and ensuring that government is not exceeding its proper role, which it clearly has, and it has been doing that for well over 100 years. If they had been doing their job even 100 years ago, we wouldn't have the bureaucratic mess that we currently do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you certainly can look back to, the obvious case is Watergate. Without members of the media, we never would have known about that.
And without members of the media, we would have probably gotten rid of Bill Clinton, as opposed to them and others.
I disagree with that. I mean, that story, in fairness, Michael, go back to that time. It was all over the media. Bill Clinton's lying on the stand, the Monica Lewinsky, the blue dress, the stain. It was the report, the Whitewater report came out. It was one of the biggest publications for USA Today and newspapers across the country. I don't buy all of what the president says. And when he does say the enemy, they are the enemy, he says it's fake news. The problem with that, Michael, and you tell me I'm wrong, the fake news is anyone who prints anything or publicizes anything or publishes anything or broadcasts anything that the president doesn't agree with.
According to the president, I would have to agree that that's the way his thinking is.
Because he's brushing it. That's a pretty broad brush stroke there. It's basically everybody. And that's not fair. And even his daughter came out last week and said she doesn't agree with that.
And in that sense, I understand that. But when their agenda, which is a clear agenda, is not that of the people, and it is to help Democrats, help liberals, help the socialists to gain more power in government and make it more of a socialist government as opposed to the proper role of government.
Who's guilty of that?
Which is simply,
who is guilty of that? Which media outlet is guilty? Is it an outlet or is it an individual reporter or who's trying to promote the liberal agenda for their own benefit?
Well, it's not necessarily so much promoting it as it is not being the watchdog and understanding the proper role of government, which is simply to protect life, liberty, and property. It's not to provide it. It is simply to protect it. And when they do not do their job and understand what that proper role of government is and out departments, out individuals within the government that harass citizens and eat out the, we just have such a huge bureaucratic government that we cannot hardly even breathe without being taxed or without having specific regulations saying what we can and can't do.
But but that's not the role of the media. The role of the media is to report. No, it isn't. It's to report on it. And one would hope that the people would listen, would read, and would pay attention, put pressure on their legislators, and thus there would become change. Donald Trump is probably a great example of that, right? People were fed up. They wanted to drain the swamp. But it's not the job of it's the job of the media to report on it. And oftentimes there's a big difference between, I hate to be schooling you, Michael, but there's a big difference between an editorial and coverage of the news. And Rush Limbaugh is an editorialist. And he has, one could say on the left, that he's ruining America with this fake news. Well, that's not true. He's giving his opinion. So when the news covers, oftentimes, almost always, there's a source. Almost always. Sometimes 2 or 3 sources. So they're quoting people in Congress. It's not like CNN's Jim Acosta is going out there and making this crap up. He's John McCain. He has several others, Democrats and Republicans, who come out and criticize the president. So isn't that the role of the media, to cover that story?
Oh, yeah, they should be covering.
Well, they do. They do.
Covering the stories.
Yeah.
But they should also be based in truth and understanding what the proper role of government is.
All right. Well, that's where I would say we would disagree, because they're reporting on people who are giving them information. They're reporting a story. They need to understand the story, not the Constitution necessarily. They need to understand the story they're reporting on. Unless you're Rush Limbaugh or you're Don Lemon, who certainly just spews his opinion all the time. But they're just covering a story. I don't see where. I wish you could tell me which media outlet or personality is destroying America with their fake news. I'm dying to know which one that is.
Yeah, well, I understand that when we see, for example, many stories, and it's across CNN, it's across many of what is termed liberal news media, when they are specifically putting on, and you can look at the numbers, and I don't have them in front of me, unfortunately.
Where they're ignoring the
Second Amendment issues, and then we have. And they're showing, we need more gun control, and they're covering those that are for gun control, but not against as much. Then clearly there's an.
Oh, well, then I'll give you an example. So I'll give you an example. If you can't come up with one, I'll give you one. CNN's coverage of the after the school shooting, CNN's coverage of the student march. Do you remember that? And they did it. There's no doubt. They had reporters who were helping the students, almost helping the students in their interviews and giving them leading questions. And he's gone now, probably out of time. That was a great example of what he's talking about. But to do this general broad stroke, I'm sorry. I know it's not popular. I'm sure people listening right now are like, yeah, it's all unfair. It's just all unfair. You have to understand the difference between an opinion piece and the news. And I don't believe that they're out trying to destroy America, like this guy is saying, that any media outlet is out there trying to destroy the country. Do you really believe that's true?
No.
I mean, come on. And I guess it can be biased. There's no doubt. You newspapers are great examples. You'll have newspapers that will lean left and newspapers that will lean right. But at the end of the day, it's up to us as Americans to take in the content, to take the time to look for opposing opinions and different opinions and form your own ultimate decision. That's our role. That's our responsibility.